that they did a outdoor show in Boulder, Colorado at Red Rocks.
Red Rocks.
And that was
the live.
That's the live record, right? But literally, it was recorded remotely, and the studio owner, his name is Randy. He's a California man, but he lived in New York at the time. He literally had a whole studio in flight cases, and he would put it either on a container or in a cargo plane.
Ship them
over. So tape machines, consoles, everything, like microphone stands, cables. I mean, big, like a lot of gear. And when the band were getting ready to go in and think about doing the Unforgettable Fire, they ended up in Slane Castle as rehearsing space. And they were like, yeah, what about that guy who had that studio? And so they invited him over with all his gear, and they decided to record the basic tracks for Unforgettable Fire
in Slane.
Yeah. Which was not, like, it wasn't built to be.
And it's very bizarre.
Yeah. And at the time, even Henry Martin Charles would probably say,
"Who's in my living room?"
Well, it wasn't fit for purpose. You know what I mean? Like the power was less than ideal.
Yeah.
But we made it work, and it was a great experience.
What's trick there? The room, the sound, or because technically you couldn't do much tweaking.
Yeah, I mean, we were recording to tape.
Yeah.
And we had these John Stevens machines that were from California. They about a third the height of a regular Studer machine, and they were roughly as deep as you needed to be to fit a 2-inch reel of tape on there. And like on the front, there were these tiny VU meters, right? And the calibration was kind of funky. Really good sounding, but it had some quirks to it. Like it really needed to see, consistent power at a certain voltage. And so that needed to be regulated. And then the other thing is you couldn't, like with other tape machines, you can take a reel of tape that's basically gone end out and you can turn it over and put it back on and erase everything. But on those machines, the erase head wasn't strong enough. It was fine if it was going from left to right, but if you take the pack and put it on the other side, do they? So one of the songs I think we were recording sort of Homecoming, and Dan was like, just turn the reel over. And I was like, we're not supposed to. He goes, just turn it over. So we turned it over, and of course, Murphy's Law, the next take was the one. And in fact, as we hit play, you could hear the reverse of the previous take, which hadn't been fully erased. It was partially erased. And then the overlay was the new track. So that track has a little bit of a kind of a little juju on it.
And you knew you had something special.
Yeah, we knew there was something special going on up there. And I'd seen the band. I saw them when they played in the Dandelion Market. I saw them when they played at Trinity because they used to come and do.
I saw them Dandelion Market.
Yeah, and they played lunchtime shows at the Pavilion, at like a lunchtime gig, and Bono up and down the steps. Yeah.
I'm sure if you ask now, there's millions of people there that day.
Nah, there was a couple of hundred students.
They had around people with the Roxy when they played there in Boston. It grows every year.
Yeah, it grows exponentially. Yeah.
And where does Irishness fit into your life, Kevin? Is it something dealing with these musicians like you two? Does it enhance it? Does it make you proud?
Oh, no, I'm totally proud to be Irish, And I think it actually has helped my career because when I first went to the States, as they say, you have an accent. So like people perk up and they go, oh, where are you from? And I always say, I'm not the one who has the accent. You have the accent. You know what I mean? Like, my accent is normal to me.
Yeah.
Now my siblings say I have an American accent because I've been there for so many years.
Yeah.
But
you do.
Yeah, no, it's going to modify. There's no.
You're not in New York. You're not.
Yeah, no, but I think the thing is when you slow the Irish accent down, it becomes broader and it does sound more mid-Atlantic. So yeah, I love being Irish. I fully identify with the wit and the humor and the kind of just the fun that people have here, and the kind of just devil may care attitude. But also, when I left, it was Ireland was really beginning to go through the transition from, in my mind, like a third world country into like the 21st century. The Irish Free State was only 60 odd years old. It had only been a member of the European community by 12 years, 13 years in the mid 80s. And you started to see like what that investment was beginning to kind of foment.
And ironically, you would have seen it close. Music made a huge difference.
Oh, music was huge.
I remember landing in Las Vegas and U2 came on, 91. What the?
Yeah.
And that really kind of put us on the map.
Yeah. And when I left Wimble, U2 were going on tour with the Unforgettable Fire. So I actually went on the road with them in Europe. We did the Netherlands, we did Denmark, we did France, we did the UK. And I doubled up doing both kind of backline stuff for Adam, but then I also was recording shows. And some of those shows ended up being that Wide Awake in America.
Bad.
And then I went to the US in late 84, and I was just like, okay, I got to know Randy, who owned FNL Music, which was the name of his remote recording company. And I thought, well, let me just go see what I can do. And I just went there, and it was really more exploration because, I didn't have an offer of a job, and you couldn't get an offer of a job until you had a visa. So you had to work at that circle.
Play the system.
So I started to make contacts, and then the band were in and out of the US. So I would sometimes go and see them play shows. And watching those shows, like I saw on that tour, they went from playing mid-sized theaters, like 1,500 people. By the end of the tour, they were playing David Byrne Arena in New Jersey, which is 21,000 people. And you could see in that same period from like December into June of the following year, 85, they were on the cover of Time magazine and Rolling Stone.
That's right.
First rock band to ever have that. Yeah. So it was like, all of a sudden you thought, oh yeah, like they're suddenly, now people ask me, oh, well, they must have been big when you first came here. But when I first moved to the States, most people really didn't know who you two were, in that way. In that next 18 months, they blew up on the Unforgettable Fire record. And then Joshua Tree was 2 years later.
That's the period I remember.
Yeah. So I ended up being there for a little bit. And then I came back. Dan called me. Dan Lanois had a studio, which is a little town called Hamilton outside Toronto. And he said that he was going to work with Peter Gabriel on the Birdie soundtrack. Who's the director?
Alan Parker.
Alan Parker. And
God rest him.
And rest his soul. And then Dan was basically repurposing tracks that basically he had never released. And so that became the soundtrack. But during that process, Peter asked Dan would he, be the producer of the next record, which turned out to be so. And
which is radical, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a radical departure for Peter. Like music.
For music in general, I thought.
Yeah.
For Peter, definitely on his own.
Yeah.
But that sound, that crisp, clear, there's something very distinct about it.
So Dan asked me would I originally come over. I had a call with him. Would I come over to England to work on the record? And they basically said, you're coming over to mix or, help finish recording and mix. And they reckoned like 4 to 6 weeks. And, in that time frame, 3 months from beginning to, top to bottom for a record, that was about the norm. So I got to Heathrow. Peter's assistant, his name is David, picked me up at the airport. Lovely guy. We were long friends now. He's married to a friend of mine in New York. And we were driving from Heathrow down to Bath, where Peter had a studio, and just chit-chatting. And he goes, so how long did they tell you were going to be here for? And he had worked for them for 5 years.
He
knew and he knew. And he said, I said, well, 4 to 6 weeks. He goes, okay. And he looked off in the distance, and about a minute later, he goes, I think you're going to be here till next March. And that was like the beginning of June. And I left March 17th.
What?
Yeah. So he knew. So that record, that was an incredible experience because obviously I reestablished my connection with Dan. I got to meet Peter. I was a big Genesis fan.
Yeah.
Got to work on this record, and we all knew it was a good record. But I'd worked on other good records that I thought could be successful up to that point. And they didn't capture the public's imagination, at least not on that initial release. Yeah. But that record, you felt like, because we would have people come by and we'd play them certain songs. And you could always just gauge from their reaction, like, well, that song is working on so many different levels. And so when Sledgehammer came out with that video, it was kind of phenomenal. And Peter was very gracious. He had pulled me aside at the end of the record. We'd finished the record in February. It got mastered. We mastered up at London at the Townhouse with Ian Cooper. And he said, you're going to need a manager. He said, yeah. He said,
he could see.
Yeah, he could see. He knew the record would be successful. Well, he was confident the record was going to be successful. It was a great piece of advice because two of my friends who worked with you two in New York, Ellen Darst and Karen Kaplan. They were starting their own management company under the umbrella of Principal. Yeah. They called it Mambo Management. Yeah. And so T-Bone Burnett was their first client and I was their second client. Yeah. So immediately, that record came out. I went from Bath to Boston for about a week. I had a bunch of meetings there. I came back to Ireland and I worked on a record with Howard Jones and Arif Martin. And that's where I was like, okay, they said, well, you're going to come to the US. And
was that Howard's first one?
No, it was called One to One.
1-to-1.
Yeah. And so that was like where, okay, the label's going to help me get my papers and all that stuff, And
at this stage, were you pinching yourself?
It was surreal. Yeah, it was very surreal because to hear a record you worked on be on the radio every day, multiple times. Frankly, I'm in the studio working on another record.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm not really out there listening.
But your ego is chuffed.
Well, you're definitely, you're thinking, okay, that's good. My parents kind of as a little aside, when I was in Lombard, came in and visited one day. And like I said, Lombard was great in the beginning for me, but it wasn't the most deluxe looking place. It was a little on the shabby side, but it worked great. And my parents were looking at me thinking,
is this real?
Is this what you want to do? And so after I joined Windmill, there was a point where Bill Whelan was doing a jingle for Guinness, and it was like a big ad campaign. Like they were sinking a lot of money into it. And I knew Bill very well at this moment, and I guess at some point I'd related that